The morning mist clung to the Afghan mountainside like a shroud, and Staff Sergeant Maria Santos pressed her cheek against the cold metal of her rifle scope. Her breath came out in small puffs of vapor as she adjusted her position behind the Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle. 300 meters below, the forward operating base looked like a collection of tan-colored Lego blocks scattered across the valley floor. Another quiet morning in paradise, she muttered to herself, scanning the ridgeline across the valley through her scope. The joke felt hollow even as she said it. There was nothing peaceful about this place, even when it was quiet. Especially when it was quiet. Maria had been on this hill for 6 weeks now, serving as backup sniper for what command called Overwatch operations. The primary sniper team occupied the main observation post 2 clicks to the north. She was alone up here except for the radio that crackled occasionally with updates from base. Alone with her thoughts, her rifle, and the constant weight of responsibility that sat on her shoulders like a lead blanket. The radio squelched. Overwatch 2, this is base. Radio check. Maria keyed the handset. Base, this is Overwatch 2. Lima Charlie. Loud and clear. Copy that, 2. Maintain position. Primary team reports all quiet on the northern approach. Roger, base. Overwatch 2 out. Maria set the radio down and returned to her scope. She had been doing this for 8 months now, ever since arriving in country. Always the backup. Always the second choice. When Sergeant First Class Rodriguez had been selected as primary sniper, Maria had swallowed her disappointment and accepted her role without complaint. That was the military way. You did your job, you followed orders, and you didn't let personal feelings interfere with the mission. But it stung. Maria had outshot Rodriguez in every qualification exercise back at Benning. Her scores were consistently higher, her technical knowledge more complete, and her field craft superior. Yet when it came time to assign positions, Rodriguez got the primary spot and Maria got backup duty on a lonely hill where nothing ever happened. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the mist and revealing the stark beauty of the Afghan landscape. Rocky outcroppings jutted from barren hillsides like broken teeth, and, in the distance, snow-capped peaks pierced a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Maria had grown up in the suburbs of San Antonio, where the biggest hill was an overpass. This mountain country still took her breath away, even after all these months. She adjusted her position slightly, feeling the familiar ache in her left shoulder where she had taken shrapnel from an IED blast 3 months earlier. The medics had wanted to send her back to Germany for surgery, but Maria had refused. Minor flesh wound, she had insisted. Nothing that would keep her from doing her job. The truth was, she couldn't bear the thought of being sent home while her unit stayed in the fight. She had worked too hard to earn her place here. Growing up, Maria had been the quiet kid who preferred books to parties. Her father, a retired army sergeant, had taught her to shoot when she was 12. Marksmanship is about more than just pulling a trigger, he had told her during those long afternoons at the range. It's about patience, discipline, and understanding your equipment. Most of all, it's about knowing when to take the shot and when to wait. Those lessons had served her well through basic training, sniper school, and her first deployment to Iraq. Maria had a natural gift for reading wind patterns, calculating distances, and remaining motionless for hours at a time. Her instructors at sniper school had called her exceptional. Her squad mates called her Ice Queen because of her calm demeanor under pressure. The radio crackled again. All stations, this is base. We have confirmed enemy movement in Sector 7. Primary team is repositioning for better observation. Maria's pulse quickened slightly. Sector 7 was outside her area of responsibility, but she swiveled her rifle toward that direction anyway. Through her scope, she could see dust clouds rising from a dirt road that snaked through the mountains. Vehicles moving fast. Overwatch 2, this is base. We're getting scattered reports of enemy activity throughout the AO. Keep your eyes open. Roger, base. Overwatch 2 is scanning. Maria settled into her scope and began a systematic search of her assigned sector. The Barrett .50 caliber was a beast of a weapon, capable of putting a round through an engine block at over a mile. But it was also precise enough to thread a needle at 800 meters if the shooter knew what they were doing. Maria knew what she was doing. She had been on this hill long enough to memorize every rock, every tree, every dead bush in her field of view. When something was out of place, she would know it instantly. The morning light was perfect now, no heat shimmer to distort her vision, no harsh shadows to hide movement. If anyone was stupid enough to show themselves in her sector, she would see them. Hours passed. The sun climbed toward its zenith, and the temperature began to rise. Maria sipped water from her camelback and checked her gear for the 100th time. Radio batteries at full charge. Rifle cleaned and zeroed. Ammunition counted and recounted. Everything ready, even though she expected another day of absolutely nothing happening. The attack came without warning. The first explosion echoed across the valley like thunder, and Maria felt the shockwave in her chest. She pressed her eye to the scope and saw black smoke rising from the main gate of the forward operating base. A second explosion followed, then a third. The radio erupted with shouted communications. Base is under attack. We have vehicles approaching from the south. I count 4 technicals with mounted weapons. Where's our air support? Negative on close air, weather's moving in from the west. Through her scope, Maria could see muzzle flashes winking like deadly fireflies around the perimeter of the base. The attackers had positioned themselves well, using natural cover to mask their approach until the last moment. This was no random probe by amateur fighters. This was a coordinated assault by people who knew what they were doing. All Overwatch positions, this is base. We need immediate fire support on any targets of opportunity. Maria scanned frantically through her scope, searching for targets in her assigned sector. The enemy had been smart enough to stay out of the northern approaches where the primary sniper team was positioned, but she might be able to catch them in the flanks if they try to maneuver. There. Movement on a ridgeline 800 meters to her east. Maria adjusted her scope and saw 3 figures in traditional Afghan dress carrying AK-47 rifles. They were moving carefully from rock to rock, trying to get into position to fire down into the base. If they reached the crest of that ridge, they would have a perfect angle on the motor pool where fuel trucks were parked. Maria centered the crosshairs on the lead figure and controlled her breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Find the natural respiratory pause and squeeze the trigger straight back. The fundamentals her father had taught her all those years ago. But something stopped her. These weren't uniformed soldiers. They could be farmers defending their land. They could be teenagers who had been given rifles and told to fight. The rules of engagement were clear about positive identification of hostile intent, and simply carrying a rifle in Afghanistan wasn't enough. Through her scope, she watched the 3 figures reach a position where they could see down into the base. The lead man raised his rifle and aimed toward the fuel depot. That was enough. Maria squeezed the trigger. The Barrett's report was like a thunderclap, and the massive rifle drove back against her shoulder with bone-jarring force. Through her scope, she saw the lead figure crumple and fall. The other 2 immediately took cover, but Maria had already cycled the bolt and was tracking the second target. Good hit, came a voice over the radio. Who fired that shot? Maria didn't answer. She was already lining up on the second target, who had made the mistake of exposing himself to get a better firing position. The crosshairs settled on center mass, and Maria squeezed the trigger again. Another thunderclap. Another target down. The third figure broke cover and ran, weaving between rocks as he tried to escape. Maria tracked him smoothly, leading his movement and waiting for a clear shot. When he stumbled and had to slow down to navigate a particularly treacherous section of the slope, Maria took him. 3 shots. 3 targets eliminated. Outstanding shooting, the radio crackled. Overwatch positions, report your status. Overwatch 1, no targets in my sector. Maria keyed her radio. Overwatch 2. 3 enemy Kia on ridgeline east of fuel depot. Continuing to scan for targets. Overwatch 2, this is base actual. Confirmed 3 enemy Kia? Confirmed, base actual. 3 armed hostiles eliminated at approximately 800 meters. There was a pause before the commander's voice came back over the radio. His tone had changed. Gone was the stressed urgency of combat. Now there was something else. Curiosity. Maybe even respect. Overwatch 2, those were some impressive shots. What's your position? Hill 447, base actual. Another pause. Maria could almost hear the wheels turning in the commander's head. Hill 447 was considered a secondary position. The backup post. The place where they put snipers when they didn't have anywhere else to put them. Copy that, Overwatch 2. Outstanding work. Continue mission. The firefight raged for another 2 hours, but the enemy assault had lost its momentum when their flanking element was eliminated. Unable to get around the base's defenses, the attackers were forced into a direct frontal assault that played to the defenders' advantages. By afternoon, it was over. The enemy had withdrawn, leaving behind several destroyed vehicles and at least a dozen casualties. Maria remained in position throughout the entire engagement, but she never got another clear shot. The 3 targets on the ridgeline had been her only opportunity to contribute to the fight. 3 shots that may have saved American lives. 3 shots that proved she belonged here. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple, Maria finally allowed herself to relax slightly. The radio had been quiet for over an hour. The base was reporting all secure. Medical helicopters had evacuated the wounded, and resupply birds were already inbound with ammunition and equipment to replace what had been expended in the fight. Overwatch 2, this is base. You're relieved. RTO inbound to your position for pickup. Roger, base. Overwatch 2 standing by for pickup. Maria began the careful process of breaking down her position. Ammunition inventory. Equipment check. Police up any trash or evidence that might reveal their observation post to future enemy reconnaissance. It was standard operating procedure, drilled into every soldier until it became second nature. But, as she worked, Maria's mind kept returning to those 3 shots. The way the rifle had felt in her hands. The satisfaction of seeing her rounds impact exactly where she had aimed them. The knowledge that her marksmanship had made a difference in the outcome of the battle. For 8 months, she had been the backup. The second choice. The sniper who sat on a lonely hill where nothing ever happened. But, today, when it mattered most, she had been ready. When the enemy tried to outflank the base and catch the defenders by surprise, Maria Santos had been there to stop them. The sound of boots on rock announced the arrival of her ride back to base. A young private with a radio on his back scrambled up the final stretch of the trail, breathing hard from the climb. "You Sergeant Santos?" he asked between gasps. "That's me. Man, everyone's talking about those shots you made today. Word is the CO wants to see you when we get back." Maria shouldered her pack and picked up her rifle case. "Is that right?" "Yes, Sergeant. They're saying you saved the fuel depot. Maybe the whole base." Maria started down the trail, her boots finding purchase on the loose stone. Behind her, the private struggled to keep up. "How long you been up there by yourself, Sergeant?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Damn. I'd go crazy up there alone. Maria smiled grimly. You get used to the quiet. But, as they made their way down the mountainside toward the waiting Humvee, Maria found herself wondering if her days of quiet solitude might be coming to an end. Today had changed something. Today, she had reminded everyone what she was capable of. Today, Maria Santos had stopped being just the backup. The command post was buzzing with activity when Maria arrived back at the base. Officers huddled around maps spread across folding tables, while enlisted soldiers moved efficiently through their post-battle routines. The acrid smell of cordite and diesel fuel hung heavy in the air, mixing with dust kicked up by helicopters landing and taking off on the nearby helipad. Maria made her way through the organized chaos, her rifle case slung over her shoulder. Several soldiers she passed nodded at her with something that looked like newfound respect. Word traveled fast in a small forward operating base, and apparently her performance on Hill 447 had become the topic of conversation. Santos. The voice belonged to Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, the primary sniper who had spent the day on the northern observation post. He jogged over, his own equipment still strapped to his back. Hell of a day for shooting, huh? Just doing my job, Rodriguez. Your job? Rodriguez laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lady, you just made shots that most snipers only dream about. 800 meters in shifting wind conditions? I couldn't have made those shots. Maria studied Rodriguez's face carefully. She had known him for over a year, had competed with him in training exercises, had watched him get selected for the primary sniper position. He was a good soldier and a decent shot, but Maria had always suspected that politics had played a role in his selection. Rodriguez was popular with the officers, comfortable in briefings, quick with a joke that could defuse tension in stressful situations. "You would have made them if you'd been in position," Maria said diplomatically. "Maybe. But I wasn't in position, was I? I was sitting up north watching empty mountains while you were covering the real approach route." Rodriguez shook his head. "Makes a guy wonder about our intelligence reports." Before Maria could respond, a young lieutenant approached them. "Sergeant Santos? Colonel Brennan wants to see you in the TOC. Now." The Tactical Operations Center was the nerve center of the forward operating base, a climate-controlled trailer filled with computer screens, radios, and situation maps. Colonel Brennan stood at the central display, still wearing his body armor despite the fact that the attack had ended hours ago. He was a lean man in his early 40s with prematurely gray hair and the kind of intense focus that marked career infantry officers. "Sergeant Santos reporting as ordered, sir." Brennan turned from the map and studied her with sharp blue eyes. "At ease, Sergeant. I've been looking forward to this conversation." Maria relaxed slightly but remained standing at attention. She had dealt with Colonel Brennan only once before, during her initial briefing when she arrived at the base. He had struck her as competent but distant, the kind of officer who focused on the big picture and left the details to his subordinates. "Tell me about your shots today," Brennan said without preamble. 3 enemy combatants were attempting to establish an overwatch position on the eastern ridge, sir. They were armed with small arms and moving into position to fire on the fuel depot. I engaged at approximately 800 meters and eliminated all 3 targets. 800 meters. Brennan consulted a notebook. Wind speed was gusting between 8 and 12 knots from the southwest. Temperature was 87 degrees. Humidity was low. He looked up. "Those are challenging conditions for long-range shooting." "Yes, sir. But, well within the effective range of the Barrett system. For an expert marksman, perhaps. What's your background, Sergeant? Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Maria hesitated. She had learned not to talk too much about her qualifications. In her experience, male soldiers sometimes reacted poorly when they discovered that a woman had outperformed them in traditionally masculine skills. "I grew up shooting, sir. Competed in high school and college. Graduated top of my class from sniper school at Benning." Brennan consulted his notebook again. "Top of class. Score of 347 out of 350 on the final exercise. That's exceptional." He set the notebook down. "So tell me, Sergeant Santos, if you're such an outstanding marksman, why have you been sitting alone on Hill 447 for the past 6 weeks? The question hung in the air between them. Maria could feel the attention of everyone else in the TOC, even though they were pretending to focus on their own tasks. This was dangerous territory. Criticizing personnel assignments or questioning command decisions was a good way to damage your career. "I was assigned to Overwatch 2, sir. I executed that assignment to the best of my ability." "That's not what I asked." Brennan's voice was patient but firm. "I asked why someone with your qualifications was assigned to a secondary position." Maria chose her words carefully. "I assume command had its reasons, sir." Brennan nodded slowly. "Command did have its reasons. Want to know what they were?" Maria said nothing. "Sergeant First Class Rodriguez has more time in service. He's got a good reputation with the men. He's been to Ranger School. On paper, he looked like the obvious choice for primary sniper." Brennan paused. "But paper doesn't tell the whole story, does it?" "No, sir. Today you proved something that I've suspected for months. You proved that we've been wasting our most valuable asset by sticking you on a hill where nothing happens." Brennan moved to the situation map and pointed to the spot where Maria had made her shots. "If you hadn't been in position today, those 3 insurgents would have had clear lines of sight into our fuel depot. They could have set off secondary explosions that would have killed dozens of our people." Maria remained silent, unsure where this conversation was heading. "I'm making some changes," Brennan continued. "Effective immediately, you're being reassigned as primary sniper for all Overwatch operations. Rodriguez will move to backup status on Hill 447. The words hit Maria like a physical blow. She had dreamed of this moment for months, but, now that it was happening, she felt overwhelmed by a mixture of pride, relief, and anxiety. "Sir, I appreciate the confidence, but, no buts, Sergeant. You've earned this position. The question is whether you're ready for the responsibility that comes with it." "I'm ready, sir." Brennan studied her face. "Being primary sniper means more than just making long-range shots. You'll be briefing officers on enemy movement patterns. You'll be making split-second decisions about when to engage and when to hold fire. You'll be responsible for intelligence gathering that could affect the safety of everyone on this base." He paused. "Most importantly, you'll be setting the example for every sniper in this unit. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility?" "Yes, sir. I hope so, because I'm also sending you on a mission that will test every skill you possess." Brennan turned to the map and pointed to a location about 20 kilometers to the northeast. "Intelligence reports indicate that a high-value target will be moving through this area in 48 hours. A Taliban commander who's been coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout this region." Maria stepped closer to examine the map. The terrain looked challenging, mountainous country with limited approach routes and plenty of places for enemy forces to establish security positions. "What's the mission, sir?" "Interdiction. You'll insert with a reconnaissance team to establish an overwatch position along his likely route of travel. If you get a clear shot at a positive identification, you're authorized to engage." Maria felt her pulse quicken. This was exactly the kind of high-stakes mission she had trained for. "What's the timeline?" "You'll insert at 0400 day after tomorrow. Helicopter will drop you at a landing zone about 5 kilometers from your objective. You'll move into position during darkness and wait." Brennan looked at her seriously. "This won't be like sitting on Hill 447. You'll be deep in enemy territory with no backup and no easy extraction route if things go wrong." "Understood, sir. Your spotter will be Corporal Williams from the reconnaissance platoon. He's good at what he does, but he's never worked with a sniper before. You'll need to train him on the basics." Maria nodded. She had worked with untrained spotters before. It required patience and clear communication, but it could be done. "One more thing," Brennan added. "This mission is classified at the secret level. You don't discuss it with anyone who doesn't have a need to know. That includes Rodriguez and the rest of your sniper section." "Yes, sir." Brennan extended his hand. "Welcome to the big leagues, Sergeant Santos. Don't let me down." Maria shook his hand firmly. "I won't, sir." As she left the TOC, Maria's mind was already racing through mission planning considerations. Equipment requirements. Route analysis. Weather forecasts. Communication protocols. There were 1,000 details to consider, and only 48 hours to prepare. But underlying her professional excitement was a deeper emotional current. For the first time since arriving in Afghanistan, Maria felt like she was being given a mission that matched her capabilities. No more sitting alone on a hill waiting for nothing to happen. No more watching other people get the assignments she was qualified to handle. The news of her promotion had already begun to spread through the base. Maria could see it in the way soldiers looked at her as she walked back to her quarters. Some appeared pleased, particularly the younger enlisted soldiers who appreciated seeing talent recognized regardless of gender or politics. Others seemed less enthusiastic. Change was always difficult in military units, especially when it challenged established hierarchies. Rodriguez was waiting for her outside the barracks. His expression was carefully neutral, but Maria could see the tension around his eyes. "Congratulations," he said. "I heard about your new assignment." "Thank you. Look, Santos, I want you to know there are no hard feelings. You made great shots today. You deserve this." Maria studied his face. Rodriguez was saying the right words, but his body language told a different story. His shoulders were tight, his jaw clenched. This couldn't be easy for him. "You're a good soldier, Rodriguez. This doesn't change that. I know. And I'll do my job on Hill 447 just like you did. No complaints, no attitude problems." He paused. "But I have to ask, how long have you known you were better than me?" The question was so direct that Maria was taken aback. What do you mean? Come on, Santos. We both know you're a better shot than I am. You've always been a better shot. At the range, during exercises, in training scenarios. So how long have you been sitting there thinking you should have my job? Maria considered lying, but Rodriguez deserved honesty. Since the first week. Rodriguez nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Must have been frustrating. Sometimes. Well, now you get your chance to prove what you can do. Don't screw it up. He turned and walked away, leaving Maria alone with her thoughts. She understood his frustration. If their positions had been reversed, she would probably feel the same way. But understanding didn't make the situation any less awkward. Maria entered her small living space in the barracks and began laying out her equipment for inspection. Tomorrow she would start preparing for the most important mission of her career. A mission that would test not just her marksmanship skills, but her ability to operate independently in hostile territory. As she cleaned her rifle for the second time that day, Maria thought about the path that had brought her to this moment. Growing up in Texas, she had never imagined she would someday be a sniper in the mountains of Afghanistan. She had planned to be a teacher, maybe a coach. The military had been a way to pay for college, nothing more. But life had a way of revealing talents you never knew you possessed. The first time Maria had looked through a rifle scope and placed a shot exactly where she intended it to go, she had felt something click into place. This was what she was meant to do. This was where she belonged. The next morning arrived gray and cold, with low clouds obscuring the mountain peaks. Maria woke before dawn and immediately began her mission preparation routine. Physical training first, a 5-mile run through the base perimeter to ensure her cardiovascular system was operating at peak efficiency. Then, breakfast, but only light foods that wouldn't cause problems during a long period of motionless observation. Equipment inspection came next. Maria laid out every piece of gear she would carry on the mission, checking each item for functionality and serviceability. Rifle, scope, ammunition, range cards, communication equipment, survival gear, camouflage materials. Everything had to be perfect because there would be no opportunity for repairs or replacement once she was in position. The afternoon was devoted to working with Corporal Williams, her assigned spotter. Williams was a 22-year-old from Ohio who had been in the Army for 3 years. He was intelligent and eager to learn, but completely inexperienced in sniper operations. The spotter's job is more important than most people realize, Maria explained as they sat in an empty classroom. You're not just calling wind direction and range estimates. You're my second set of eyes, my link to the command structure, and my backup if something goes wrong. Williams nodded seriously. What do I need to know? Everything. How to use the spotting scope. How to read wind conditions at different distances. How to identify targets and confirm positive identification. How to call in medical evacuation or close air support if we take contact. Maria handed him a thick manual. Study this tonight. Tomorrow we'll practice on the range. Yes, Sergeant. And, Williams? This mission stays between us. You don't talk about it with your friends, you don't mention it in letters home, you don't even think about it when other people are around. Understood? Understood, Sergeant. That evening, Maria found herself on the base perimeter, looking up at Hill 447 where she had spent the past 6 weeks. A small light was visible at the observation post where Rodriguez was now stationed. Maria wondered what he was thinking as he sat alone in her old position. Was he angry about the role reversal? Relieved to finally have a turn at the primary sniper job? Or was he simply focused on doing his duty regardless of personal feelings? In less than 18 hours, Maria would be on a helicopter heading deep into enemy territory. The mission would either validate Colonel Brennan's confidence in her abilities or prove that Rodriguez had been the right choice all along. There was no middle ground in sniper work. You either made the shot or you didn't. You either completed the mission or you failed. Maria turned away from Hill 447 and headed back to her quarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove herself. Tonight, she needed to rest and prepare her mind for what lay ahead. As she settled into her narrow bunk, Maria's last thought was about her father's words from all those years ago. Marksmanship is about patience, discipline, and understanding your equipment. Most of all, it's about knowing when to take the shot and when to wait. Tomorrow, she would find out if she truly understood the difference. The Black Hawk helicopter cut through the pre-dawn darkness like a mechanical bird of prey, its rotors chopping the thin mountain air with rhythmic precision. Maria sat in the cargo compartment, checking her equipment one final time by the dim red light that illuminated the interior. Across from her, Corporal Williams gripped his spotting scope case with white knuckles, his young face pale but determined. 5 minutes out, the crew chief shouted over the engine noise. "Weather's good, no wind to speak of. Landing zone is clear." Maria nodded and keyed her radio to check communication with the command post. "Base, this is Hunter 1. Radio check. Hunter 1, this is Base. Lima Charlie. You're cleared for insertion. Copy, Base. Hunter 1 out." The helicopter began its descent toward a small clearing nestled between rocky ridgelines. Through the open door, Maria could see the landscape below bathed in starlight. This was true wilderness, far from any village or road. If something went wrong out here, they would be completely on their own until extraction could be arranged. 30 seconds, called the crew chief. Maria stood and moved toward the door, Williams close behind her. The downdraft from the rotors kicked up clouds of dust and debris as the aircraft settled toward the ground. The moment the skids touched earth, Maria leaped out and sprinted toward the tree line, her heavy pack bouncing against her back. Williams followed, stumbling slightly under the weight of his equipment but managing to keep up. Behind them, the Black Hawk was already lifting off, disappearing into the darkness with a fading rotor signature that would be inaudible within minutes. Silence settled over the mountain like a blanket. Maria dropped to one knee and listened intently. Night sounds filtered through the thin air, insects, the distant cry of some nocturnal bird, wind moving through pine trees. Nothing that suggested human presence or activity. She waited 5 full minutes before keying her radio. "Base, this is Hunter 1. Successful insertion at LZ Alpha. Beginning movement to objective. Copy, Hunter 1. Report when in position." Maria checked her GPS and compass, orienting herself toward their destination. The observation post she had selected from satellite imagery was 3 kilometers to the northeast, on a ridge that overlooked the valley where their target was expected to travel. The route would take them through dense forest initially, then across more open ground as they climbed toward their position. "Stay close," she whispered to Williams. "Keep noise discipline. If I stop, you stop. If I drop, you drop. Questions?" "No, Sergeant." "Let's move." The first hour of movement was the most dangerous. They were still close enough to the landing zone that enemy forces might have detected the helicopter insertion. Maria set a careful pace, stopping frequently to listen and observe. Williams followed her example, learning quickly to move quietly through the underbrush. As they climbed higher, the forest gave way to rocky terrain dotted with stunted trees and scattered boulders. The going became easier but more exposed. Maria used available cover to mask their movement, avoiding ridgelines where they might be silhouetted against the star-filled sky. By the time the eastern horizon began to show the first pale hints of dawn, they had covered 2/3 of the distance to their objective. Maria called a halt in a grove of pine trees that offered concealment and a good view of the surrounding terrain. "How are you doing?" she asked Williams quietly. "Good, Sergeant. Tired, but good. Get some water and food. We'll rest here for 30 minutes, then move into our final position." Williams nodded and pulled out an energy bar from his pack. Maria studied the route ahead through her binoculars. The observation post she had selected was a natural formation of large boulders about 800 meters from the road where intelligence indicated their target would travel. It offered excellent fields of view, good concealment, and multiple escape routes if they needed to withdraw quickly. "Sergeant?" Williams kept his voice low. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "How do you know where to go?" "I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere, but you seem to know exactly where we are and where we're going." Maria smiled slightly. "Practice. I've been doing this for a while. You learn to read terrain, to understand how elevation and slope affect movement, to think like someone who might be hunting you." She pointed toward their objective. "See that ridgeline? That's where we're headed. Natural fortification, good observation angles, hard for anyone to approach without being seen. What if someone's already there? Then, we find another position or call for extraction. But, intelligence says this area is clear of enemy forces. Do you trust intelligence? The question was more sophisticated than Maria had expected from the young corporal. I trust intelligence as far as it goes. But, I also trust my own eyes and ears more than any report from headquarters. They resumed movement as the sky lightened, covering the final kilometer with extra care. The terrain here was completely open, offering no concealment except for scattered rocks and shallow depressions. Maria chose a route that kept them below ridgelines and out of sight from the valley below. The observation post exceeded her expectations. The boulder formation created a natural hide position with excellent fields of view toward the road. Large rocks provided overhead cover from aerial observation, while gaps between them offered multiple shooting positions. A small depression at the rear would allow them to rest and eat without being visible from any direction. This is perfect, Williams whispered as they settled into position. It's good, Maria agreed, already setting up her rifle. But, remember, we might be here for hours or even days. Perfect gets old fast when you're lying on rocks with insects crawling over you. Maria assembled her shooting position with practiced efficiency. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle went on its bipod in the center of the hide, positioned to cover the most likely area where their target would appear. She set up range cards with distances to various landmarks, noting wind flags and other reference points that would help her judge shooting conditions. Williams established his spotting position slightly behind and to the left, where he could observe the same area through his spotting scope while remaining in communication with Maria. He practiced ranging to different objects, learning to use the mil-dot reticule to estimate distances. Base, this is Hunter 1. In position at observation post Charlie. Good visibility, no enemy activity observed. Copy, Hunter 1. Target is still estimated to arrive sometime between 1400 and 1800 hours. Continue observation and report any activity. Roger, base. Hunter 1 out. The waiting began. Sniper work required a special kind of patience. Not the passive waiting of someone sitting in a doctor's office, but an active, focused vigilance that could be maintained for hours without degradation. Maria had learned to enter a state of relaxed concentration where she could remain motionless while staying completely alert to changes in her environment. The hours passed slowly. The sun climbed higher, heating the rocks until they became almost too hot to touch. Maria and Williams took turns at the spotting scope, sharing observations and maintaining communication with base. Occasionally, local traffic passed on the road below, farmers with donkey carts, children herding goats, an old pickup truck loaded with produce. Normal life continuing despite the war being fought in these mountains. At 1,330 hours, Williams spotted movement to the north. Sergeant, I've got vehicles approaching from Sector 2. Maria swung her rifle toward the indicated direction and peered through her scope. A convoy of 3 vehicles was moving south along the mountain road. 2 pickup trucks and what appeared to be a sedan, all traveling at moderate speed with no obvious security measures. Could be our guy, Maria murmured. Base, this is Hunter 1. We have 3 vehicles approaching from the north. Requesting positive identification guidance. Hunter 1, this is base. Target vehicle is described as a white Toyota sedan with front bumper damage. Target individual is approximately 40 years old, medium build, dark beard, wearing traditional Afghan dress. Through her scope, Maria could see that the middle vehicle matched the description. White sedan, damaged front bumper. As the convoy drew closer, she was able to make out individual passengers through the windows. I've got eyes on the sedan, she reported to Williams. Can you see the occupants? Williams adjusted his spotting scope. Driver and 1 passenger in front. 2 passengers in back. Rear passenger on the left side matches target description. Maria centered her crosshairs on the sedan and began her shooting calculations. Range to target, 650 meters. Wind, light and variable from the southwest. Temperature, 85 degrees. Humidity, low. All factors within acceptable parameters for a precision shot. Base, this is Hunter 1. Positive identification on target vehicle. Request permission to engage. Hunter 1, stand by. The convoy continued south, moving closer to the optimal firing position Maria had identified. If they were going to take this shot, it needed to happen within the next 2 minutes. After that, the vehicles would be past the effective engagement area and into terrain that would make a clean shot impossible.
Come on, Maria whispered. Give me permission to engage. Hunter 1, this is base.
You are cleared to engage upon positive visual identification of target individual. Maria felt her pulse slow as she entered the shooting trance that all snipers learn to cultivate.
External distractions faded away.
Her world narrowed to the scope picture, the rhythm of her breathing, and the feel of the trigger beneath her finger. The sedan was now 625 meters away and moving directly toward them. Through her scope, Maria could see the passenger in the rear left seat clearly. Male, approximately 40 years old, dark beard, traditional Afghan clothing.
He matched the target description perfectly. Target identified, she reported to Williams.
White sedan, rear passenger left side. Confirmed, Williams replied.
I have positive identification. Maria adjusted her point of aim slightly to account for the vehicle's movement.
The sedan was traveling at about 25 miles per hour, which meant she needed to lead the target by approximately 18 inches at this range. She waited for the natural pause between breaths and began to squeeze the trigger.
The shot never came.
Just as Maria was about to fire, a child appeared in the scope picture. A young boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sitting next to the target individual. The child had been obscured by the man's body and the window frame, invisible until the angle changed as the vehicle moved closer.
Maria lifted her eye from the scope, her finger coming off the trigger. Negative shot. There's a child in the vehicle. Say again, Hunter 1? Negative shot. Child in target vehicle. Cannot engage.
Through her scope, Maria watched the convoy pass through her engagement area and continue south until it disappeared around a bend in the road. The Taliban commander they had been sent to eliminate was gone, but so was the risk of killing an innocent child. Williams looked at her with confusion.
Sergeant, why didn't you take the shot?
Because there was a kid sitting right next to him.
I couldn't risk it. But the target is gone, yes.
But that child is going home to his family tonight instead of dying in a car with a terrorist. Maria began breaking down her rifle position.
Some things are more important than completing the mission. Base, this is Hunter 1. Target has passed through engagement area without engagement due to presence of civilian non-combatants. Request further instructions.
The radio was silent for several long moments before the response came.
Hunter 1, this is base actual.
Understand target passed without engagement.
What is your assessment of re-engagement possibilities?
Maria studied the terrain to the south through her binoculars. The road wound through several valleys before reaching the next major intersection.
There might be other opportunities if they moved quickly.
Base actual, possible re-engagement opportunity at checkpoint Bravo if we can reposition.
Estimated movement time 45 minutes. Negative, Hunter 1. Weather is moving in from the west. Extraction helicopter cannot wait. Return to LZ Alpha for pickup. Maria felt a mixture of disappointment and relief.
Part of her wanted another chance at the target, but part of her was glad the mission was over. Making the decision not to shoot when a child's life was at risk had been easy. Living with the consequences of that decision might be harder.
Copy, base actual. Hunter 1 returning to LZ Alpha. The movement back to the extraction point took 2 hours.
Storm clouds were building over the western peaks, and the wind had begun to pick up. By the time they reached the landing zone, Maria could hear thunder echoing through the mountains. The extraction helicopter arrived exactly on schedule, its pilots eager to get back to base before the weather turned completely bad. As Maria and Williams climbed aboard, the crew chief shouted over the engine noise.
How'd it go? You get your guy?
Maria strapped herself into the seat and checked her rifle case to ensure it was secure.
Mission complete.
It wasn't exactly true, but it wasn't exactly false either. The mission had been to eliminate a high-value target if the opportunity presented itself under acceptable conditions. The opportunity had presented itself, but the conditions had not been acceptable.
Maria had made the right call.
As the helicopter lifted off and headed back toward base, Maria stared out at the rugged landscape below. Somewhere out there, a Taliban commander was continuing his journey, probably unaware of how close he had come to death. And, somewhere else, a young boy was riding in a car with his father or uncle, equally unaware that his presence had saved both their lives. Williams leaned over to speak in her ear.
"Sergeant, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you think we'll get in trouble for not taking the shot?" Maria considered the question.
In the military, mission accomplishment was paramount. Allowing a high-value target to escape could be seen as a failure, regardless of the circumstances. On the other hand, avoiding civilian casualties was also a priority, explicitly stated in the rules of engagement.
"I don't know," she answered honestly. "But I can live with the decision I made. That's what matters."
The helicopter banked toward the forward operating base, racing against the approaching storm. Below them, the mountains of Afghanistan stretched endlessly in all directions, beautiful and deadly and unchanging. This war would continue long after Maria went home, fought by other soldiers making their own impossible decisions in the space between duty and conscience. But, today, a child was safe. Today, Maria Santos had proven that being a sniper was about more than just pulling a trigger. It was about knowing when not to pull it. The storm hit the base with the fury of an angry giant, turning the mountains into a landscape of howling wind and driving rain. Maria sat in the debriefing room, still wearing her wet combat uniform, as Colonel Brennan reviewed her mission report. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the stark concrete walls. "So you had a clean shot at a confirmed high-value target, and you chose not to engage because of a civilian in the vehicle," Brennan said without looking up from the paperwork. "A child, sir. Approximately 8 to 9 years old."
"I can read, Sergeant." Brennan set down the report and studied Maria's face. "The question is whether you made the right decision." Maria kept her voice steady. "I believe I did, sir. The rules of engagement are clear about minimizing civilian casualties.
But they're also clear about the priority of eliminating high-value targets when the opportunity presents itself." Brennan leaned back in his chair. "This individual has been linked to at least 6 attacks on coalition forces. American soldiers are dead because of his activities."
"I understand that, sir. Do you?"
Brennan stood and moved to the wall map, pointing to the area where the mission had taken place.
"Intel says he was traveling to a meeting with other regional commanders.
Our next opportunity to locate him might not come for months.
Maybe never."
Maria felt the weight of doubt pressing down on her shoulders. In the field, the decision had seemed obvious. A child's life was more important than any military objective. But, here, in the sterile environment of the debriefing room, she found herself questioning whether she had been too cautious. "Sir, I had to make a judgment call in the moment. There was significant risk of civilian casualties if I had engaged."
"How significant?" "You're an expert marksman. Could you have placed the shot to minimize risk to the child?" The question was a trap, and Maria knew it. If she said yes, it implied she should have taken the shot. If she said no, it suggested her skills weren't adequate for the mission. The target was in a moving vehicle at 625 meters in variable wind conditions. The child was seated directly adjacent to the target. Any shot carried unacceptable risk of civilian casualties. Brennan nodded slowly. "That's your professional assessment?"
"Yes, sir." A knock on the door interrupted the conversation. A young lieutenant entered and handed Brennan a folder marked with classification stamps. "Sir, this just came in from Division Intelligence." Brennan opened the folder and read quickly. His expression changed as he absorbed the contents. "Well, Sergeant Santos, it appears your decision may have been even more complicated than we thought." He turned the folder so she could see a surveillance photograph. "Take a look at this." The image showed the same white sedan they had observed, but taken from a different angle. In the back seat, Maria could clearly see the bearded man they had identified as their target. Seated next to him was the child she had seen through her scope. But now she could also see something that had been hidden from review during the mission. The child was wearing what appeared to be an explosive vest. Maria felt her blood turn cold. "Sir, is that a child suicide bomber? Intel believes the boy was being transported to conduct an attack on a coalition checkpoint about 15 kilometers south of your position." Brennan closed the folder.
The target wasn't traveling to a meeting. He was delivering a human weapon.
The room seemed to spin around Maria. Her decision not to shoot had saved a child's life, but it had also allowed that same child to be used as a weapon against other innocent people.
How many coalition soldiers might die because she had hesitated? How many Afghan civilians might be killed in the crossfire?
The checkpoint, Maria managed.
Did the attack happen? We're still waiting for confirmation.
Communications are down in that sector due to the storm.
Brennan sat down across from her.
But, based on the timeline, if an attack was planned for today, it would have happened by now. Maria stared at the photograph, trying to reconcile what she was seeing with her memories of the mission. Through her scope, the boy had looked like any other child, innocent, possibly scared, caught up in adult conflicts beyond his understanding. But, he had been carrying death on his small body, trained to kill himself and others in service of an ideology that viewed children as expendable weapons. Sir, even knowing this information, I believe I made the correct decision based on what I could observe at the time.
Explain.
I could see a child in the target vehicle. I could not see any explosive device or other indication that he posed a threat. The rules of engagement require positive identification before engaging civilian targets, even suspected combatants.
Maria paused.
If I had taken that shot and killed a child, even a child suicide bomber, the propaganda value to the enemy would have been enormous.
Brennan considered this. You think about propaganda implications during target engagement?
I think about everything during target engagement, sir. The immediate tactical situation, the strategic implications, the legal and moral dimensions. That's what separates a professional sniper from someone who just shoots people.
Another knock on the door.
This time it was the communications sergeant, carrying a radio message. Sir, priority traffic from the checkpoint at Cali Kale. Brennan read the message, his face revealing nothing.
Thank you, Sergeant.
That's all. After the communications sergeant left, Brennan set the message down on his desk.
The checkpoint was attacked approximately 2 hours ago. Vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. 3 Afghan National Police killed, 5 wounded. No coalition casualties. Maria felt sick.
The child she had refused to kill had become a weapon that had killed other innocent people.
The mathematics of war were brutal and unforgiving.
The attack was conducted by the same white sedan you observed, driven by your target individual. The child was apparently killed instantly when the device detonated. Brennan looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. So your decision to spare his life bought him approximately 3 hours. Sir, I couldn't have known. No, you couldn't.
Which brings us to the larger question.
Brennan moved to the window and stared out at the storm.
How do we make moral decisions in an immoral situation? How do we maintain our humanity while fighting an enemy that has abandoned theirs?
Maria had been asking herself the same questions since arriving in Afghanistan. Every day brought new evidence of the Taliban's willingness to use civilians as weapons or shields. Women and children were routinely placed in harm's way to protect military assets or gain propaganda advantages.
The enemy understood that coalition forces' adherence to moral standards could be exploited as a tactical weakness.
I don't have answers to those questions, sir. I can only try to make the best decision possible with the information available at the time.
And, you believe sparing that child was the best decision?
Maria thought about the photograph of the boy wearing an explosive vest.
She thought about the 3 dead policemen at the checkpoint.
She thought about her own father's words about knowing when to take the shot and when to wait.
Yes, sir. I believe it was. Brennan turned from the window. Why?
Because the moment I start making decisions based on what might happen rather than what I can actually observe, I stop being a professional soldier and become something else.
Maybe a murderer. Maybe just another killer in a landscape full of killers. Even when those decisions result in other people dying? Especially then, sir. The enemy wants us to become like them.
They want us to stop caring about civilian casualties, to start treating children as acceptable targets, to abandon the moral standards that separate us from terrorists.
Maria stood straighter.
Every time we hold to those standards, even when it costs us tactically, we win something more important than any military objective. Brennan studied her for a long moment.
That's a very idealistic perspective, Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
I suppose it is. Idealistic perspectives don't always survive contact with reality. No, sir. But neither do armies that abandon their principles.
The colonel moved back to his desk and picked up another folder.
Intel believes your target individual was coordinating with 3 other regional commanders.
The meeting you prevented by not taking your shot was apparently rescheduled for tomorrow night at a location approximately 40 kilometers north of here. Maria felt her pulse quicken.
Sir, are you offering another mission? I'm offering you a choice.
You can return to Overwatch duty on Hill 447, where your moral sensibilities won't be challenged by difficult targeting decisions.
Or you can prepare for another interdiction mission, knowing that the next shot you're offered might be even more complicated than the last one. The offer was both generous and challenging.
Brennan was giving her a way out, a chance to step back from the hard decisions that came with being a primary sniper. But he was also testing her resolve, checking whether her idealistic principles could withstand the pressure of real-world consequences.
What are the mission parameters, sir? Brennan smiled slightly. Intelligence indicates all 4 regional commanders will be attending this meeting.
It's an unprecedented opportunity to decapitate the Taliban leadership structure in this entire region.
He paused.
It's also likely to be heavily guarded, possibly with civilian shields, definitely with experienced security personnel.
Rules of engagement? Standard. Positive identification required. Minimize civilian casualties. Engage targets of opportunity when conditions permit.
Brennan looked at her directly. But, understand, Sergeant Santos, this may be our only chance to eliminate these individuals for months or even years.
The pressure to take difficult shots will be enormous.
Maria thought about Rodriguez on Hill 447, probably wondering if his career was over because of her sudden promotion.
She thought about the 3 dead policemen at the checkpoint.
She thought about the child with the explosive vest, trained to die for causes he couldn't possibly understand.
I'll take the mission, sir. You're sure? This isn't about proving anything to me or anyone else. This is about whether you can live with whatever decisions you have to make out there.
I can live with making the right decisions for the right reasons, sir. Even when those decisions have bad consequences.
Brennan nodded. Fair enough. Mission brief is tomorrow at 0800. You'll have the same spotter, same equipment, different insertion point.
This time you'll be going in deeper, staying longer, and facing more complex targeting scenarios.
Understood, sir. One more thing, Sergeant.
The After-Action Review Board has concluded that your decision not to engage was tactically sound and morally justified based on available information. It will have no negative impact on your record or career. Brennan picked up her mission report. In fact, it demonstrates exactly the kind of judgment we want from our snipers in ambiguous situations.
Relief flooded through Maria.
She had been prepared to accept whatever consequences came from her decision, but knowing that it wouldn't damage her career removed a significant weight from her shoulders.
Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. Wait until after tomorrow night's mission.
Maria left the debriefing room and stepped out into the storm. Rain lashed across the base, turning the dusty roads into rivers of mud. Lightning illuminated the mountains in stark, brilliant flashes that revealed the raw power of nature in this hostile landscape. As she walked back to her quarters, Maria encountered Williams near the communications building. The young corporal looked exhausted, his uniform still damp from their mission.
Sergeant Santos. I heard about the briefing. Are we in trouble? No, Williams. We're fine.
In fact, we've got another mission tomorrow night.
Williams's expression was a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Another sniper mission? Bigger than the last one. For high-value targets at a single location.
Maria paused under the overhang of a supply building to escape the worst of the rain.
Are you ready for that level of responsibility?
I think so, Sergeant. I learned a lot today.
About patience, about observation, about making decisions under pressure. What did you learn about making decisions under pressure? Williams considered the question carefully. That sometimes the hardest decision is not to act.
That being a professional soldier means thinking about more than just completing the mission.
Maria nodded approvingly. The young corporal was learning the right lessons from their experience. Get some rest tonight, Williams.
Tomorrow we start preparing for something a lot more complicated than anything we've done before.
Yes, Sergeant. And, Sergeant? I think you made the right call today. About the kid, I mean. Thank you, Williams. I hope you still think that after tomorrow night.
As Maria continued toward her quarters, she reflected on the events of the day. In the space of 12 hours, she had gone from backup sniper to primary operator to moral philosopher to something approaching a war criminal in her own mind, then, back to professional soldier with a clean conscience and another dangerous mission ahead.
The mathematics of war were indeed brutal and unforgiving.
But they were also deeply human, requiring judgment calls that went far beyond technical skill or tactical knowledge. Tomorrow night would bring new challenges, new moral complexities, new opportunities to prove that professionalism and principle could coexist even in the darkest corners of human conflict. Maria opened the door to her quarters and stepped inside, grateful for shelter from the storm.
Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought.
Tonight, she would rest and prepare her mind for the hardest decisions a soldier could face.
The mission briefing room was crowded with personnel Maria had never seen before.
Special operations soldiers with beards and non-regulation equipment sat alongside intelligence analysts carrying thick folders of classified documents. The air was thick with tension and the smell of strong coffee that had been brewing too long. Colonel Brennan stood at the front of the room next to a large display screen showing satellite imagery of the target location.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Operation Keystone.
As of 2,300 hours last night, we have confirmed intelligence that 4 high-value targets will meet at this compound starting at approximately 2,100 hours tonight. The screen changed to show detailed floor plans of a traditional Afghan compound.
Stone walls surrounded a central courtyard with several buildings arranged around the perimeter. Guard towers marked each corner, and only one apparent entrance provided access from the road.
These 4 individuals, Brennan continued as photographs appeared on the screen, represent the senior Taliban leadership for this entire region. Taking them out of action would significantly degrade enemy capabilities for months, possibly years. Maria studied the faces on the screen. All middle-aged men with the hard eyes of people who had been fighting wars their entire adult lives. The third photograph showed the man she had observed through her scope 2 days earlier, the target who had escaped because of the child in his vehicle.
Mission concept is straightforward, Brennan said. Sniper team will insert at LZ Bravo and move to observation post Delta, approximately 800 meters from the target compound.
Rules of engagement are standard with one modification. Given the strategic importance of these targets, you are authorized to engage through light cover if positive identification can be maintained. A special operations captain raised his hand.
Sir, what about civilian presence at the compound?
Intelligence indicates the meeting will include approximately 6 bodyguards and minimal civilian support staff.
Possibly a cook and a driver.
No families, no children. Brennan looked directly at Maria. However, Sniper Team has final authority on engagement decisions based on observed conditions. Maria felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders again. This mission would require the same kind of judgment calls that had made her previous assignments so difficult, but with even higher stakes.
Extraction is planned for 0300 hours at LZ Charlie, approximately 2 kilometers north of the observation post.
Weather forecast is clear, no moon, excellent conditions for night operations.
Brennan turned to Maria. Questions, Sergeant Santos? Sir, what's the intelligence confidence level on the meeting time and location? High confidence. We have multiple sources confirming both. An intelligence analyst stepped forward. Sergeant, we've been tracking communications intercepts related to this meeting for 3 weeks. The location is a known safe house, and the timing matches their established operational patterns. Maria nodded.
High-confidence intelligence was rare in Afghanistan, where information was often incomplete, contradictory, or deliberately misleading. If multiple sources were confirming the same details, the meeting would almost certainly happen as briefed. Backup plan if targets don't appear? You remain in position until 0200 hours, then move to extraction. But, based on current intelligence, we expect this meeting to occur as scheduled. The briefing continued for another hour, covering communication protocols, emergency extraction procedures, and coordination with other units operating in the area. Maria absorbed every detail, building a mental picture of the mission from insertion to extraction. After the formal briefing ended, Colonel Brennan approached her. Sergeant, a word in private? They moved to a smaller conference room where Brennan closed the door and activated a white noise generator to prevent eavesdropping. This is your chance to redeem the other night, he said without preamble. Sir, I don't consider the other knights something that needs redemption.
Maybe not. But others might see it differently. Successfully completing this mission would put an end to any questions about your judgment or capabilities. Brennan sat down across from her.
That said, I want you to know that you have my complete confidence regardless of what happened before.
Thank you, sir. There's something else you need to know. Division is watching this operation closely.
Very closely.
Success could mean significant career opportunities for everyone involved.
Failure. He left the sentence unfinished.
Maria understood.
Military careers were made and broken on high-visibility operations like this one.
Success could lead to promotion, advanced training opportunities, assignment to elite units.
Failure could mean being quietly transferred to less important positions where ambitious officers went to finish their careers in obscurity. Sir, I'll do my job to the best of my ability.
That's all I can promise. That's all I'm asking for.
The rest of the day passed in intensive preparation. Maria and Williams rehearsed their communication procedures, reviewed the target photographs until they could identify each individual instantly, and conducted equipment checks that bordered on obsessive. Every piece of gear was examined, tested, and examined again. As evening approached, Maria found herself thinking about her father's advice one more time. Most of all, it's about knowing when to take the shot and when to wait. Tonight would test whether she truly understood that distinction.
The insertion flight was smooth and uneventful. Perfect weather, no enemy air defense activity, precise navigation by the aircrew.
The helicopter dropped them at LZ Bravo exactly on schedule, and within 30 minutes they were moving through the darkness toward their objective. The terrain was more challenging than their previous mission. Rocky ground with loose stones that could easily betray their position if they weren't careful. Deep ravines that had to be crossed or bypassed. Areas of exposed ground where they would be vulnerable if enemy forces were patrolling the area. Maria set a careful pace, stopping frequently to listen and observe. Williams followed her example, moving quietly and staying alert for any signs of danger. By 20-30 hours, they were in position at Observation Post Delta with excellent visibility toward the target compound. The compound was exactly as briefed. Stone walls, guard towers, a single entrance from the road. Through her scope, Maria could see sentries in the towers and at least 2 more guards patrolling the perimeter. Lights were visible in several buildings, and vehicles were parked in the courtyard.
Base, this is Hunter 1. In position at OP Delta. Target compound is active with multiple personnel visible. Copy, Hunter 1. Continue observation and report target arrival.
Maria settled into her shooting position and began the methodical process of range estimation and environmental assessment. Distance to the compound, 847 meters. Wind, calm with occasional light gusts from the northwest. Temperature, 72 degrees. Humidity, moderate. All factors well within the effective engagement envelope for the Barrett .50 caliber system. At 20:47 hours, Williams spotted movement on the road leading to the compound. Sergeant, vehicles approaching from the south. Through her scope, Maria could see headlights moving along the mountain road. 3 vehicles, 2 pickup trucks and a sedan similar to the one she had observed 2 days earlier. The convoy moved slowly, probably conducting security checks as it approached the meeting site. Base, this is Hunter 1. 3 vehicles approaching target compound from the south.
Copy, Hunter 1. Maintain observation and report target identification.
The vehicles entered the compound through the main gate and parked in the courtyard. Maria watched through her scope as the passengers disembarked. Armed guards first, establishing security positions around the vehicles. Then, several men in traditional Afghan dress, moving with the careful dignity of people who were accustomed to being important.
Williams, are you getting good visibility on the individuals exiting the vehicles?
Yes, Sergeant. I count 7 armed guards and 4 individuals matching our target profiles. Maria compared the faces in her scope to the photographs from the mission briefing.
Target 1, confirmed.
Bearded man, approximately 50 years old, wearing a brown paycall hat.
Target 2, confirmed.
Younger man with distinctive scarring on the left side of his face.
Target 3, confirmed.
The same individual she had observed 2 days earlier during the failed engagement.
Base, this is Hunter 1. Positive identification on targets 1, 2, and 3. Still looking for target 4. Copy, Hunter 1. Target 4 may be delayed. Continue observation. The 3 confirmed targets moved toward the main building of the compound, accompanied by their bodyguards. Maria tracked them through her scope until they disappeared inside. Lights came on in what appeared to be a meeting room on the ground floor, and shadows moving past the windows confirmed that the gathering was beginning. At 2103 hours, another vehicle arrived at the compound. A black pickup truck carrying 2 passengers. When they exited the vehicle, Maria immediately recognized the 4th target from his mission briefing photograph. Target 4 confirmed, she reported. All 4 high-value targets are now at the compound. Outstanding, Hunter 1. You are cleared to engage when you have acceptable shot opportunities. This was it. The moment that would define not only this mission but, possibly Maria's entire career. 4 of the most wanted Taliban commanders in Afghanistan were gathered in a single building, less than 900 meters from her rifle. Maria studied the compound through her scope, looking for the optimal engagement opportunity. The meeting room where the targets had gathered was on the ground floor with large windows facing in her direction. Interior lighting made it possible to see shapes and movement inside, but the angle and distance made positive identification of specific individuals impossible. Williams, can you see any of the targets through the building windows? Negative, Sergeant. Too much obstruction and the lighting is wrong. Maria considered her options. The targets would have to exit the building at some point, either to return to their vehicles or to move to different locations within the compound. When they did, she would have clear shots at ranges well within her capabilities. But waiting posed risks. Extended time and position increased the chances of detection by enemy security forces. Weather conditions could change. The targets might leave individually rather than as a group, reducing the strategic impact of the mission. Base, this is Hunter 1. Targets are inside the main building. Requesting guidance on engagement timing. Hunter 1, this is Base Actual. Your mission is to eliminate the targets when tactically feasible. Use your judgment on timing. The decision was hers to make. Maria settled into her scope and prepared to wait for the right opportunity. Time passed slowly. Through her scope, she could see guards moving around the compound, maintaining their security positions. Occasionally, someone would exit the main building, usually a guard or support personnel, never one of the primary targets. At 2237 hours, Williams spotted movement at the main building. Sergeant, I think the meeting is breaking up. I see multiple individuals exiting the building. Maria swung her rifle toward the building entrance and saw several men emerging into the courtyard. 2 guards first, then target 1, then target 2. They moved across the open space toward the parked vehicles, talking casually and showing no signs of concern about potential threats. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. Clear visibility, positive identification, minimal risk of civilian casualties. Maria centered her crosshairs on target 1 and began her final shooting sequence. Breathing controlled. Natural respiratory pause. Trigger squeeze initiated. The Barrett's massive report echoed across the mountainside like thunder. Through her scope, Maria saw target 1 collapse instantly. The other individuals in the courtyard dove for cover, but Maria was already tracking target 2. Second shot. Another thunderclap. Target 2 fell behind a pickup truck. Chaos erupted in the compound as guards began firing wildly in all directions, searching for the sniper's position. Muzzle flashes lit up the courtyard like deadly fireworks, and the sound of automatic weapons fire echoed off the stone walls. Maria searched for target 3 through her scope but couldn't locate him. The remaining individuals in the compound had taken cover behind vehicles and buildings, making additional shots extremely difficult. 2 targets down, she reported to Williams. Looking for 3 and 4. Sergeant, I've got movement on the north side of the compound. Someone's trying to escape through a breach in the wall. Maria shifted her aim toward the indicated location and saw a figure climbing through a gap in the compound's northern wall. The lighting was poor and the range was extreme, but she could make out enough detail to confirm it was target 3, the same man who had escaped 2 days earlier. The shot was at the edge of her effective range and complicated by poor visibility, but it was the only opportunity she was likely to get. Maria adjusted her point of aim and squeezed the trigger. The impact was clean. Target 3 crumpled at the base of the wall. 3 down, Maria announced. Still looking for 4. But Target 4 had apparently learned from his companion's fate. No additional movement was visible anywhere in the compound, and the return fire from the guards was becoming more organized and better directed. Base, this is Hunter 1. 3 targets down, 1 still unaccounted for. Compound security is actively engaging. Request extraction guidance. Hunter 1, maintain position and attempt to locate Target 4. Close air support is inbound to your location. Maria continued her search through the scope, but the compound had gone dark. No exterior lighting, no movement in the windows, no signs of activity anywhere. Target 4 had either escaped during the chaos or was hiding somewhere inside the buildings. Minutes passed. The return fire from the compound gradually decreased, then stopped entirely. Either the guards were conserving ammunition or they had been instructed to maintain concealment until they could determine the sniper's location. "Sergeant," Williams whispered, "I think I hear helicopters." The sound came from the south, the distinctive whoop-whoop-whoop of rotorcraft moving fast and low. Maria looked up from her scope and saw navigation lights moving across the valley. "Base, this is Hunter 1. I have rotary wing aircraft approaching from the south." "Copy, Hunter 1. That's your close air support. Call sign Hammerflight, 2AH-64 Apaches. They're going to sanitize the compound and search for Target 4. The attack helicopters arrived over the compound like mechanical angels of death. They're thermal.